Hi, Gina.
Hi.
Nice to have you on the What podcast, and also really lovely to have this one-on-one time with you. I'm going to invite you to just share anything you'd like to share about yourself with our audience, and then we'll get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalie, for extending the invitation to sit with you, yes, in a one-to-one space. I feel really grateful to have a conversation with you. My name is Gina Perrault. I am an owner and a CEO of a multidisciplinary health clinic. And we do full circle plan of care for our patients with multidisciplinary physiotherapy, massage, nursing, chiropractic, and psychology. Um,
Wow.
we're looking at growing and expanding the business to include other disciplines such as dietitian and nurse practitioner. And the big vision for our practice is actually to support people in fundamental kind of health and wellness knowledge and education to empower them, um, to really steward a vibrant life that they want to live. And this came from seeing a very overburdened, highly taxed public healthcare system.
Mm.
And we have this philosophy in our practice that, we want to do such a great job in patient education and empowering them with their health choices that they never really um, are accessing our healthcare system in crisis because they have this mindset of being preventative. So that's where we're at right now. Um, I would say for the longest time, I've truly kind of just identified as just a physio. And so even for me to be up here and say that I'm a founder and a CEO, that it took me a long time to kind of step into that next level of identity for myself. But yeah.
And so, what do you think that was about for you?
For the largest part is imposter syndrome.
Mm.
So what really came to mind for me was, who do I think I am? That I could possibly be in this position to lead a strong team of very skilled, very professional uh, uh, people. So it took a lot of work around being able to identify with being good enough to step into a role that, was truly responsible for the health of the business and supporting people within their professional journeys and the vision, the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
So, what does it feel like now when you step in?
Um, Very exciting. I I feel less with the imposter syndrome work that I've done. I feel less that it's happened by luck and
Mm.
more that I've worked really hard and have done a lot of uh, self-development and professional development, not only within the realm of physiotherapy, my initial trade, but within the other side of it of business. So it feels great to say it, I guess. And if I could go even further, it feels great to say it as a woman, as a mom, who really tries to balance all hats. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good to hear you say it. I'm happy you're saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives us all permission, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I really feel. Because I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of coaches feel, a
Mhm.
lot of entrepreneurs feel, anybody really, professionals. So it's really great to call it what it is, and I love what you said that I think I don't know what words you used, but something about taking ownership of how hard you work to get here. That
Mhm.
that is so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I feel like an imposter, I don't give myself that credit,
Uh-huh.
right? Not doing that. So it's so good. Well, I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm like really curious about how you started your journey. I think you're out west, right? Where are you in the
Yeah,
world?
I'm out near Calgary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did it begin for you? How did your business grow?
Well, I worked primarily in other practices as contractors, and um, I have always loved being in a place of connection and adding value to the people that I have had the opportunity to meet on their health journey. But truly, how it all started for me for my own business was recognizing that the current structure of leadership that I was working with was, I guess, outdated in
Okay.
a sense. Um, you know, very much a sense of leadership of scarcity, managing, not inspiring. And all of a sudden, it kind of hit me. I was turning 40 that year, and I was trying to bridge, being a mom and working downtown Calgary. And um, the yeah, it was like the culture and the leadership was no longer working for me. So I took a brave leap of faith of leaving a very secure, thriving business to start a home business out of my basement. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I had at that time a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. And my husband decided to take pat leave. And so I was treating patients in the basement, and he was upstairs with the kids. And you would hear
Nice.
crying and all of the things. And patients, I don't know, they just loved it. And I felt a sense of not being good enough being in my basement, coming from a clinical sense of the type of care. And so I really had to wrap my head around that. But we opened up our doors to our community, and what turned to be, 10 patient visits a week, over the course of 6 months turned into 20. And then over the course of the year, it was turning into 40. And I had a friend who was a massage therapist, and she joined me in my basement. And so there was the two of us moms just trying to balance being a mom and doing what we loved.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden I was looking across my basement um room, and there's like two people sitting on the couch in the waiting room. And my husband is a red seal carpenter, and I that night went upstairs and I said, Derek, do you think that you could possibly build an accessory building on our property, and we
Oh,
can move the clinic from the basement into that? And he said, sure. So then we got the approvals, and I was telling my patients, yeah, we're building an accessory building. That's great. And so they were kind of thinking this very small little garage. But it ended up being a 2,000 square foot building with a
on
basement.
your property?
Yes, we
That's
have an
so good.
acreage.
Go big or go home, Gina.
It was. It was. And I remember standing in there, Natalie, for the first time being embarrassed, thinking like, it's so big. What are people going to think? And, oh, did I make the right decision? And then um, it just started filling and growing, and I had clinicians reaching out to work with us. Never really me having to find people, but people experiencing the energy, the vibrancy. um and so my team grew from a team of 3 to a team of 10 within 3 years. And then one of my friends, she owns a non-for-profit called the Arenda Society. They do a youth mental health advocacy. I'm on their board. I do group facilitation with them. They moved into the basement, and all of a sudden, there was just one day I just stood back and I was like, "Man, it was meant to be how it is." Hmm.
And are you still in that building?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have about 4 acres, and so we share our yard with the community of the foothills and Okotoks and South Calgary, and people come and
Wow.
go, and we developed a grassroots preventative health program where we have kids camps running all throughout the summer, ages 5 to 7, and we're teaching our kids about health literacy, movement literacy, emotional regulation, growth mindset. Again,
Wow.
trying to think about, if we really want to grow um, self-regulated, healthy adults. Let's start planting the seed in our youth. Again, when we think of this big overarching picture of offloading our public healthcare system, we just need some grassroots programming that is filtering in and supporting, some of the language that we might be shared at school or at home. Mhm.
That sounds incredible. It sounds like a wholesome wellness center.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going through a rebrand right now. The original name of the business is Restorative Sports Therapy, and we're going through a rebrand to be Restorative Whole Therapy,
Mm,
um, just for the holistic nature. And that at first it was really anchored around sports, and when we take a look at our demographic, it's general population, health and wellness, really
mm,
fundamental easy things that people can do for free that really make big impact, in lifestyle. Mhm.
mm. Well, that sounds well. Congratulations. That really sounds wonderful.
That's super fun.
And so, I mean, I want to make an assumption that as an entrepreneur, it wasn't always easy. I would imagine you hit some roadblocks. I'm curious to know what was that journey like for you?
The growth of the business, even stepping into the new business, was very stressful. My health took a back seat. And actually the year that we opened up in 2019 in our new business, in 2020, COVID happened, but I was also diagnosed with rare lymphoma. So it was like I went through a cancer,
Oh, no.
part of that. And so the whole entire journey of the past 5 years, we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary in the space. And with this team, it has been a journey of self-discovery. It has been a journey in learning business really quick and really fast. Um, I last year really came to adopt some really grounding parasympathetic practices in my life. Every day it's a big 5K walk around
Yeah.
our acreages, baths, meditation, smudging, that sort of thing. It's you can because you can get lost in the business,
Yeah.
you can get
Oh,
lost in
yeah.
the doing. And so I've been really working on just present moment, present what needs to be done now, because as a business owner, and as you know, it's never done and it's never going to be done.
No,
So it's
it's
just
never when I sometimes I think, yeah, there's a finished, what does finished look like? It's
yeah,
never finished.
never finished. But what can I do today that is going to feel like I've moved the needle forward, or is going to feel that I've added value to someone who works with me? So it's like, what is my biggest move that I can do today, whether it's grand or not? Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so you had some big kind of struggles there.
Yeah.
What do you think resilience means?
I always think of resilience, um, back to my original training of physiotherapy of tissue resilience, which is truly adaptation.
Hmm,
And so resilience for me is understanding the strength that we gain through adapting through life situations.
hmm,
And so transformation happens through the discomfort, through the pressure. And in order to grow, just as tissue, in order for it to be stronger, we need to stress it. And so resilience for me is looking for the opportunities of through the struggles of what have I gained through that. How am I growing? What can I leave behind? What am I taking forward? Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, well, because I have often thought of coaching as a practice of building resilience because
Mhm.
of the reflective aspect and the opportunity to not just, share an experience, but reflect on it. And, what does it mean to me and what's different and what will I do now that I know this? That's the work of building resilience. So I wondered what you thought, does that feel right to you?
Yeah, for sure. I again, I it's how do we adapt under pressure? And what is the outcome of that? And through a large part of that is reflection, it's feedback. What's the feedback that we've given? And not only externally from voices around us, but internally.
Yeah.
How is my internal system responding to the stress or the pressure or the load that's placed on me right now? Mhm.
So what do you think it was about you? Because, young kids, a health crisis. Um, what was it about you that kept you moving towards that North Star, whatever that was for you? Like,
Well, I mean, if we can think about whether it was good or not, or some of the patterns that I may have adopted throughout my life, whether it is overachieving, um, pushing through, doing more. If I could peel back the layers of that even further, it through a lot of awareness through myself, truthfully, it was, I think, always chasing the not good enough
yeah.
from that point of it. And so I think that's what kind of kept me in go mode. And so that's why I say if it was it healthy or not at the time, it's all I knew. But now when I reflect back, I have a lot more awareness on how I'm making decisions and where they're coming from. Is it coming from to prove my worth? Or do I already believe that I'm worthy of this or I'm worthy, and is it necessary for me? Now a lot of it is making decisions. If I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? And right now I'm in a period of my life with a 10 and a 7-year-old. I If I say yes to this, I'm saying no to my 10 and my 7-year-old. And so that gives me a lot of perspective. But I think for I think I am here throughout this journey because of probably the self narrative that I've had throughout my life, that I needed to do more, be more, and then that would prove that I was enough. Mhm. So
Mm,
grateful if I can say for those, you know, shadow messages or dark side messages, because here I am today. What has it costed me is another story, such as maybe my health or some relationships or even just the relationship that I had with myself.
mhm,
But no matter what, I'm grateful for it because here I am. And I actually had a coaching conversation um, with a coach because I was always looking at as an overachiever as being a bad thing.
mm,
And so she really helped me shine light on how it can also be a very good thing. It's just whether or not it's kind of that balancing of it. Like, can we find it in the center? Too much of overachieving can be this, and not enough can be this. But where do we find the middle ground for it? Yeah.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like stress, isn't it? For
Yeah.
me, stress drives me. It's now, I'm not saying it's wonderful, but my relationship with stress, for the most part, is healthy.
Mhm.
That's how I feel it. That's the meaning I've made of it. And you just reminded me of something Sarah Blakely said. I went to New York to see her live, and she said, entrepreneurs have self doubt. She said, I had self doubt, so much self doubt. But she said, it's not the self doubt that's the problem, it's what you do with it.
Mhm.
And I mean, it sounds so simple. I know it's not because we're caught up in self doubt and it's a feeling that takes over. But when you think of it, like it's about the choice you make. How do you want to relate to this? And that's what I often do for myself when I'm like, I have a choice. And it's really a Buddhist principle from where I learned to separate myself. I would often like, I would push myself away and say, okay, this is happening, whether I want it to or not. How am I going to be with it? Because it's happening. I can't change it, right? I have no control.
Yep.
And that really gave me a lot of empowerment, actually,
Mhm.
through parts of the journey. So the reason I asked about the struggle is because I know a lot of our listeners are coaches just starting out, building a
Mhm.
business. I get this question all the time. How do I do this? How do I, is it possible for me? And first of all, I think it's a matter of, is it what you want? You have to decide that first. Because like you probably experienced, the moment you decide to start your own business, you go from 40 hours a week to 70 quite
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
So it's not, when I ask people, what do you want your vision for yourself as an entrepreneur, they'll often say freedom, more money, travel. And I'll be like, okay, well, those are outcomes of the hard work. So what does the business look like? And I ask them to shift their vision to the business because the outcomes are beautiful. We all want those,
Mhm. Mhm.
but the work is is tough. So if I ask you that question now, what's the, looking back 10 years from today, what does your business look like?
Um, like for me in the future looking back?
Yeah. 10 years from today, if you're looking back, what has to happen for you to feel
Oh
really
yeah,
satisfied,
for
fulfilled?
sure. I think the biggest thing that and it depends as an entrepreneur, is it you and only you, or is it you and a team?
Mm.
Because I think those are two very different scenarios too. So for me, when it was just Gina in her basement treating and trying to build a business, it literally was, me working from 10 in the morning until 7 at night, trying to establish a caseload. And again, choosing that over a maternity leave.
Mm.
Um, so for myself, if I were to look back 10 years from that point, I have a very effective operating system. So I have systems in place. We've got great process and execution. I've got an exceptional culture and a leadership team that is also stewarding it. We are, the business is constantly speaking its vision and its mission and why. And um, I mean, truthfully, it's, I'm not working in in the business anymore. I have maybe one or two meetings with my leadership team a week.
Mm.
And then I'm sitting in a coaching seat
Oh,
where,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
where I get to um, coach other small business owners who are starting,
Oh.
yeah, their entrepreneur journey. And it's not the only thing that led me to the Canada Coaching Academy. I knew that there was a gap in my leadership with my conversations and my ability to have conversations that led
Mm.
me to CCA. But then I also had experienced a business coach who was very transformational. And so 10 years from now, restorative is truthfully operating without me. Um, I get to coach clinicians if it's part of it or the leadership team, but I'm truthfully sitting in a bit of a coaching um, placement where I don't know, I get to share wisdom and support people on their vision and mission and mhm,
No, no, it's so nice.
yeah.
So when you were choosing a place to be certified, I'm curious, did you do a lot of research?
I mean, no, not at all.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had really great feedback from one or two people with Canada Coaching Academy.
Oh,
And then the gal who I'm in uh, class with, we had a dream of starting a coaching business together. So I was like, okay, well, in 3 years, restorative technically will be operating on its own. So why don't, as an entrepreneur, I start another business? Because what
mhm.
else would I do with my free time? I've arrived, I'm at the destination. What else am I doing? So, um, so again, and then this is, what am I trying to always strive for? But what's the next big impact I could make on someone's life? So, again, it was basically based on word of mouth of the integrity and the program that we chose, CCA.
Oh, good. I always love to know. I wondered if energy was a big part of it because of what you do and how you embody energy. So I
Yeah.
thought, oh, maybe there was a good connection.
Um, well, I would have to say passion after getting to hear you speak and teach. I would say passion is at the forefront because that is one of our core values in our business.
Mm,
So when I get to hear you speak from a very passionate lens, and when I think of the CCA and what it has to offer about providing a very true and grounded structure for coaching, um, and to be uh, kind of like just thrown into the principles of it. I'm very happy with the curriculum and what we've learned and the process of well, basically how you've created it. I think it's a very strong program. Yeah.
mm. Thank you. Well, and I really appreciate that coming from, you as an entrepreneur, and you know what it takes to even just curate the experience for the client. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder about so for coaching your vision, and what do you hope, I guess, what do you hope will be the next phase for you as an entrepreneur when you think about coaching, I guess.
Uh, well, I think the next phase for me is to continue to step a little bit deeper into my leadership voice.
Mm, mm,
So that has been at the forefront, and I think where I've felt the greatest transformation with going through the coaching course. My conversations with my team are so different. And I remember my first business coach saying, Gina, questions are your superpower. And I was like, what are you talking about?
I love it.
Like, what do
Sometimes
you
things just don't resonate right away, right?
not right away? And because what we learn is that we usually default to the why.
Mm,
We're not
mhm,
typically defaulting to the what.
mm,
And when you start learning about the high impact what questions and the beginner's mindset, and to come from a place of curiosity, usually the narrative or the story that we're sitting in is not the current reality of what's happening. And so, what has been very transformational with me since attending the CCA and going through this process is the conversations that I have with my team are so much more powerful.
mm,
How I get to coach my team into conversations with their patients has been
mm.
transformational. And then to take it one step further of taking this into my clinical practice and doing patient histories, my patient history somewhat becomes a coaching conversation.
Oh, I can imagine.
So, what is important for you today? What are your expectations with physiotherapy? What would make this treatment a success for you? And being able to support my new clinicians that are just coming out of grad school with some of these very high impact questions and how we set our patients up for success and us as entrepreneurs. I mean, when a patient can come in and you can ask the right question and they're basically going to give you the answer of what success their definition is. What a gift that,
So
right?
good.
And
Yes.
so I think that is when I actually get to feel the excitement of what I'm learning through this course is how I've been able to not only integrate it to my patients to get to understand what's more important for them because clinically they'll come in and I'll know exactly what I need to do, but is what I need to do matching what they need? And till
Yes.
having this course, I don't think I was truly asking the right questions. And then now that I'm armored with this superpower, I feel like I get to understand patients at a whole different level and where I thought where the treatment needed to go was not even remotely to where the patient
Oh
needed
my
to be.
gosh, that's so brilliant.
Mhm.
Yay, I'm so happy
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. So it's really fun. It
Yeah.
becomes a totally different practice for me. And then it becomes really fun in coaching conversations with my clinicians to give them this gift of questions and asking and how we're reframing it. And it actually sets patients up for a greater level of success. It sets them up with a greater adherence to their treatment plan. They feel seen, they feel heard, they're validated. And my clinicians get greater clinical outcomes. And so yeah, it's been really, really great.
So now what do you think of the power of questions?
Well, I had no idea. It it changes everything. And I really do feel, and maybe you can speak to this, is amongst feedback of people who go through this course, I can imagine that you hear feedback that there are transformations within relationships between, you know, spouses, partners, children, friends, just by remaining curious, checking assumptions at the door, asking questions. Um, so I would say it's in with all areas of my life. And even my husband is like, Gina, the personal development that you've even had since you've been through the coaching certification. He's like, you're well, and we talk about self-regulation all the time. Like, it's just questions and it just
Yeah.
opens up this whole other calm environment to be in. I don't know. Do you hear that lots from people who take the courses saying that all relationships have somewhat changed or how they're seeing the world or
Oh yeah. You broke up a little, so I'm not sure if I caught the question, but have I heard people tell
yeah.
me? Oh yeah. I actually had this experience of going into a class. I can't teach all the courses, of course. So one of my facilitators was teaching, and I jumped in to just meet the students. And this one woman had to tell me, like, she had to stop and tell me, "You saved my marriage." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure how I did that, but I'm really happy for you." And then she began with, it was just they had separated, they were no longer living together, they were on their way to divorce, and she said the this program first of all showed her what humility could look like, sound like,
Mm,
and feel like. She had never really thought to step into humility because in defense, in challenging times, we're defensive. So she actually leaned into the questions to be more humble, and it opened up a world of conversation between them that they never had a chance to have before. And she said it literally saved, and I get shivers every time I think of it because you don't know what impact you have on people until you get a story like that, of course. But I've had people call me out of the blue, tell me, I mean, I don't want to sound silly here, but like
no.
tell me I I left the church, or I moved across country, or started a whole new career. Relationships around them transform for sure. Family first is the biggest indication of the change.
Yeah.
People tell me all the time how their their partners don't recognize them anymore in a good way, like,
Mm,
or they have a stronger, more developed relationship with their children, which I love so much. That's the
yeah.
best feedback. And then, and then you have the leaders who say, I didn't just, get a, I didn't just learn to become a coach. I elevated my entire team. I've heard that before too, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I know it's the ripple effect that I knew was like my experience being coached and also coaching.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I wanted to multiply the impact. I wanted to, I actually told the class today, I said, I knew I couldn't coach 1,000 people in a day, but I could show other people to coach. And now together we can coach 1,000 people in a day.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. That's really the motivation.
Yeah, I love it. It's very transformational. I'm very much a believer that everyone needs a coach at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think that, I hesitate to talk about the experiences people have. Well, I mean, I think our testimonials speak for themselves,
Mhm,
but I love it when I hear somebody like Larry Page, head of Google, say everyone needs a coach,
mhm.
or Atul Gawande, New Yorker journalist surgeon says everybody needs a coach. I love when that's because it gives it the credibility that it needs to continue to have the ripple effect that it has, right? So, and that we're very evidence-based here in our approach, and that's important to me too because I really want people to know that these are practices that are grounded in academic peer-reviewed research,
Mhm.
and that's really important to my own development as well, right? That I've been able to step into that, deeply into that. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm deeper now than I've ever been with this
Oh,
capstone that I'm working on, but
yeah.
yeah. So what was your development like in terms of, so I may be making an assumption that you've had a lot of personal and professional growth, like training
Mhm.
experiences. I think you just came back from Costa Rica. You had I think, a somatic course of some kind.
Yeah, so Mexico.
Mexico. Oh, okay, sorry.
But I mean so mm, continuing education is so part of
Mm.
my life. I and I've always had a bit of a hunger for more knowledge. What else? How else, again, can I add value? What else am I adding to my toolbox as a clinician? So, and clinical competency and maintaining clinical competency has always been a standard of practice within our college. So, every year I have always taken 1 to 2 courses, mostly so physio based, but I would say in the past 9 years, it's been more personal development. And so, throughout my life, I have suffered from really horrible anxiety, panic attacks, that kind of stuff. And I seeked therapy and counseling. Um, and I actually found a bit of relief whenever I went onto my mat with yoga. And so that was probably the first step into a personal development journey. I was like, okay, if I can feel peace on my mat, maybe there's a way for me to extend that offering into my patients. And so I went to yoga teacher training and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to offer yoga to my patients. I was working downtown Calgary, and for a large part, you treat stress manifested in your body and it comes out as tension and pain. So I then started to offer, when I opened up my own practice, yoga classes as a way to support people in parasympathetic nervous system practices. And that was a big personal development for me, Natalie. I'll never forget when someone's like, oh, Gina, you're so beautiful when you're vulnerable. And I was like, when was I vulnerable? And they were like, when this was like through yoga teacher training, and they're like, well, when you were crying. I was like, oh. So when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I didn't understand what vulnerability was.
Oh,
And I didn't
interesting.
understand what authentic meant.
Mm.
people always used, oh, just be authentic. And I used to be so annoyed with it because I was like, what does that even mean? Authentic.
Mhm.
It's a buzzword. So it was my first kind of dip into it. And I got really anchored in the yamas and the niyamas of yoga philosophy. Um, and so then I kind of practiced and I was being a yoga teacher and offering that into my clinical setting. And then a patient of mine was on my table one time and he talked about the Hoffman process. And so the Hoffman process is a 7-day intensive, kind of a spiritual journey. Um, and I offered it as a gift to my husband at the time. He was turning 40, I think. And I was like, hey, do you want to go and do this process? And he was like, well, it seems kind of scary. And I was like, yeah. So he went and it was very transformative. Um, and it was about a year and a half. He had kind of witnessed me still in my patterns of, and paradigms and how I was thinking and living. And he one day just so casually was like, hey, I think it might be time for you to consider Hoffman. And I was like, oh, no, I'm good. Like I read the books, I read Brene Brown, like I'm pretty grounded in self-awareness and self-development, and I teach yoga and so then I went to bed that night. And truthfully, I was saying that because I was scared. I
Mhm.
went to bed that night and I was like, okay, well, what's the biggest gift that I could probably give my kids as a self-aware parent?
Mhm.
So then I ended up going and doing the process, and it was truly transformative. Very a deep dive into patterns of how we live in our life, the ability to self-regulate, awareness in vicious cycles that we live, or the stories that we live in. So that was probably very one of the pivotal moments of self-development with me. And then I just I fell in love with then supporting people in a little bit of their own self-awareness. You know, how do you then what do you do to express it? Self-compassion, then learning into self-compassion and leaning into self-compassion, because it's like we can have this awareness of, maybe these patterns by which we live. We need some way to express them out of ourselves, whether that's journaling, which we do a lot in CCA, journaling, reflection. Um, and then coming from a place of self-compassion, so reading a lot of Kristen Neff's work, so great.
Mhm.
Human experience is suffering. And then going into well, what does a new way of being look like? And so looking at Joe Dispenza's work, Mary Morrissey. And so I've really just been really interested in doing little deep dives into that transformation, or the cycle of transformation. Um, and then here we are. And coaching, I think, has been as valuable in that personal development journey as any of those other courses, because of the awareness, the curiosity, the assumptions. Compassion plays a big part in it too. Even as coaches, what we what we learn from ourselves through the process, and also extending compassion towards people that we get to sit with and have conversations with. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're just starting tomorrow night a course in compassion, the 8-week program that I developed after I took the course at Harvard that changed my whole relationship with all the things you're talking about. And one thing that stood out for me when you were just talking was, even, teaching yoga, teaching coaching, you know the practice so well, and yet, until you step into it, like the Hoffman work, you might read and know so well and really feel like you're resonating. But until you have the experience of being on the other side of it, that's where I feel that's why we made being coached mandatory in our programs, because you have to experience it to really be authentic about it, which is the word, yeah, we use a lot, kind of throw it around like, oh yeah, I want to be authentic. But what it means to me is stepping into the seat of experience.
Yeah.
to be connected
Yep.
to that work. Because I know for myself, every time I get coached, every time I go and do a class or an experience, I might think, um, cerebrally or whatever, intellectually, I know it,
Yeah.
but it's never as well as when you experience it, for
Oh,
the
I
practice.
agree. There's one thing into saying I know it, but there's another the other side of that is being able to live it and like you said, experience
Mm,
it, practice it. Um that is and then to share it, which is vulnerability, which I learned through Hoffman, true vulnerability. Um and vulnerability is part of my leadership within my business. So when I show vulnerability of not knowing or being uncertain or, I'm struggling here too, it gives my team permission to show up in vulnerability as
mm,
well.
mhm,
And then I truly learned what authenticity was after Hoffman because until you actually separate the intellect from the heart,
mm,
then you can really say, okay, well, what is my heart saying? Because I know my intellect will rationalize, it'll plan, it'll make decisions for me. But when I can tune into kind of the center of my being of what feels right, um, do you truly, I feel, did I truly understand what authenticity felt like and sounded like? Yeah.
mm. So many things I would love to dig into.
Mhm.
But one thing I will say about vulnerability, um, I think I really thought I knew what vulnerability was. And I never felt like I had a problem with vulnerability. Like I was okay to be vulnerable. I can cry. I can be humble or whatever. I can own my mistakes. Like vulnerability to me was that. And then I read what Brene Brown wrote about vulnerability. And what she said about this one sentence that got me, which was the most vulnerable feeling can be joy.
Mhm.
And I thought, wait, what? I had to sit with it for days. It's like, what? I didn't like it. I hated it. And then I was like, okay, what's coming up? And then I realized, and I still feel that tightness where, joy, of course. You're
Yeah,
in that moment of love, of gratitude. And in the moment where you realize that it's not permanent,
that's
it
right.
may not be permanent. That is the most vulnerable feeling, is to allow yourself to feel joy in
Yeah.
that moment. I was blown away by that. I mean, I'm still blown away by it. Yeah.
It's really good, and so if we talk about entrepreneurs
Mm,
and bringing it back to that, that's something that I've actually been working on this year is to sit in celebration, because I would always shy away from it because it would be like you'd be feeling great and everything's on track, and then all of a sudden the shoe drops and you're like, but if we never take the chance to sit in joy and we never take the chance to sit in that celebration and our achievements and what we're doing, then it's it is that sense of we are stepping away from a little bit of that true vulnerability of understanding that, you know, it could be all gone for tomorrow. And boy, how sad that we missed an opportunity to feel pure joy with it. Mhm.
oh, yeah. So true. The gratitude principle is so important for me in this entrepreneurial journey because you're just like what you said. It's, it's never finished. So there's always another mountain to climb. And it's obviously it's exhilarating because I wouldn't do it if it wasn't.
Yep.
And it's very meaningful, but it's hard sometimes. So when you look back on progress, and that's what I love about coaching is the reflective aspect where I know that like the people I coach or the people that even come through our programs, one of the things they don't do enough for themselves is to reflect on their progress, right? Like, look how far you've come. Look how much you've built, done, how many people you've touched. That's the celebration, right? That
Yeah.
to me is the celebration. And it's sometimes hard to let that in when we sit in imposter,
Yeah.
for sure. And sometimes I'm even surprised. Like
Mhm.
I forget that how many people have come through our programs and how many facilitators teach like our communities quite well. It's big for me. I mean, I don't know. It started with one. So it's multiplied quite a bit, and it's just such an exhilarating feeling. So yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about that. Like just allow yourself to feel
Yeah.
that win.
Finding the moments for
Yeah.
it. Because I mean, the only thing uh constant in business is nothing is really ever constant. It's change.
Right. We just hired some people, and the people doing the hiring, the one thing they told everybody, all the interviewees, was if you like predictability, and this will not be the right place for you
Yeah.
because there's so much change all the time, right?
Always. Yeah, it really is. But that's for me, it's the excitement of it. And that's where the growth happens is
Mm.
um trying to navigate it. And I'm not sure. Would you say that you're a visionary?
Okay, so I have one vision that I hold on to, but I'm not a visionary, I don't think. I mean,
Okay.
I dream, I wonder a lot. I
Yeah.
wonder a lot. My team knows
Yeah.
I wonder a lot.
Yeah.
If that's visionary, maybe,
Yeah.
but the one vision I do have is of the Coach Academy school for children sitting on the big mountain, kind of like the Harry Potter castle.
Yeah.
And I just imagine that all teachers are coaches and that every child gets to be coached in
Mhm.
their adolescence, well, their growth curve.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, but I do spend a lot of time. I know, to me, a visionary is somebody who predicts the power of an idea, and I don't feel like I can predict it. Right? Because I didn't know. Like somebody had asked me, "How did you start the academy?" And I was like, I had to think about it. I said, "Actually, I didn't. I had a course, one course. That's what I started with." Right? I didn't build an academy. I built a course, and then it became something. And I couldn't have predicted that. And I
Yeah.
had a ton of help creating the one course, right? So I couldn't have predicted, but I can't say I'm surprised
Yeah.
at what it's become, like what it can
Right.
be for sure.
Right.
So yeah, that's a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like by all definitions, I would say I'm a visionary as I I am always ideas and
Mhm.
manifestation and all of that. And
Yeah.
I always for my team, I think from a from the support of the growth of my business to the next level, it was finding a really great integrator. So someone who could take the vision and the dream and put it into a system or a process or an operation that unfolded the dream so the true manifestation could happen. So
Mm.
that's typically how I believe also got restorative to the next level of its growth is to have that integrator that helped bring your dream alive with the necessary systems, processes, and execution in order for that end goal to happen. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I actually turned to something called Strategic Coach for that. For me, it's a program I attend 4 times a year, and they coach me on creating the freedom that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And for me, the freedom is, well, I believe that the measure of a great founder is that the business can run itself. It doesn't need me,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I keep thinking about. Like, how do I build this systems, and all that integration. How do I do this when it doesn't need me? Like I do a lot of teaching right now because I love it. But
Yeah.
I know that I'm in my way. Like I need to
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
kind of pull
Working
it.
more on the business
Yeah.
instead of in the
Yeah.
business. And then taking it one step further that I've also had to step away from is knowing that because I am getting out of my own way of having to maybe have my hands always in there, I'm allowing for the business to evolve, expand in maybe a direction that I didn't see coming because I am allowing other people to have their creativity infused into it, their ideas with it through these coaching conversations. And so, what my ideal for restorative might be in this moment, because of getting a leadership team who has, you know, they have the overall vision and mission, but the path that they might be taking because I step away might be different. And can I get out of my own ego and remove that away? Is to allow that because it could be better. It could be something I didn't think about. So that is like letting go of the reins in a
Yeah.
sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
Allowing so much leeway that they can kind of operate in order to get there, but not allowing myself to get in the way of, having to have my hand in it, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you think about, for me, the first hire that I ever made was Kate, who's with me today. And it was the hardest one because I had to let go of
Mhm.
like one, really, it was one part, facilitation. And I had a hard time because it was, I don't know, when you created everything, you did everything, you built it from ground up, you're like, how can somebody else do this? But
Yeah,
then what you end up realizing is that, oh, okay, so maybe other people can do it better than me. you know,
totally. And
like
that's
they
what we
have
hope
their own style, their own energy.
for.
And I learned from Kate how letting go and trusting is such a gift because
Mhm.
she's an incredible asset to our team. And then I started to push away, like over years, not in that moment, but I pushed away a lot of the things that I had been doing and allowed people to like take over and make it yours. Don't make it
Mhm.
mine. Don't try and replicate what I did. Like I
Yeah.
tell the facilitators all the time, don't try and be me. Be
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
and represent the material and represent,
Totally.
whatever, but be you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love empowering. I mean, it's hard. It is hard,
Mhm.
but it feels so good when people, like if I think of every member of our team, Marianne, I mean, she has made customer service its own beautiful
Yeah.
thing. Like it's not because of me, it's because of who she is,
Yeah.
right? And trying to micromanage that would have stifled her creativity
Oh,
with it, you know?
and more stress for you
Mm.
and less freedom.
Yeah. 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 Oh, it's great to chat with you. Like this is so fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to do this again.
I love it. I love it is definitely is not hard for me to go down a conversation of personal development, business development, entrepreneurship. I love all of it and to come back full circle about entrepreneurs wanting to start a coaching business and what that's going to be like. It's, you know, at the beginning, you might be putting in 70 hours and or the hard work hours, but really when you're so in love with what you're doing, lots of times those hours don't really feel like work.
No.
It's just so if you're in flow and you love being in it, but there is a point where systems and structure come into play in order to almost, reap the fruits of all of your labor. It's
Hmm.
it's
Oh,
there
yeah.
to support you with the freedom that you've envisioned. And I think that's why it's so important to not have the identity as a coming back to like James Clear's work with Atomic Habits, not to have the identity of a CEO, but some of the characteristics of, I believe in developing people and programs and things, and what are the characteristics of that. So then we truly can take a step back a little bit and allow other people to grow what we've originally started.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, it's so yeah, it's really empowering, and I'm just thinking about like the power of conversation about it, the energy shared. Like when I went to that female founders collective, it was called, and it was
Hmm.
all these really empowered women who had like built these fabulous businesses, like way bigger than what I can imagine. And I'm just looking at them, like Sarah Blakely and others. There were workshops all day filled with these really empowered, successful entrepreneurs. And I kind of went into it like, like you said about yoga. Oh, I teach yoga. It's fine. I don't need to not that you said that, but like I
You
imagine
did.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur. I don't need to learn from other entrepreneurs. And then I
Yeah.
show up there and I'm like, oh my God, look at all these great ideas and the energy. And I learned so much in that one day.
Yeah.
And I had like my energy was high. I was excited. Like I couldn't wait to come back and tell the team. And that that's what it's about, right? That's what
Maybe
it's about.
that will be an evolution or a community part of CCA, that there is business roundtables of what's working and what
Oh
systems
yeah.
and what's process and
Yeah.
execution that
Yeah.
develops for the support of entrepreneurs. I think it's really important. I am a member of an EO group in Calgary, and I have accountability group with 6 other entrepreneurs from different businesses, once a month. And then we go to 7 learning days a year where we spend a full day either in talent and people or process and
Yeah.
execution or strat planning, cash and finance. And it's so valuable. And to get into a group of people with this very much of a collective mindset, because you can sit at a table with someone who has a scarcity mindset that doesn't want to share because heaven forbid they take what you have and and you do it better, versus finding a really big group of people who also want you to win, and you're sharing stories or experience shares that will support them, or handing them a tool or a resource to say, try this, like this really worked for me, could you integrate this into your business? So to have that collective supportive community who really wants other small business owners to grow and thrive, it's really important to find those networks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And it's why we started community.
Hmm.
It's exactly why. It's for that energy to bring people together, to learn best practices and
Hmm.
shared experience. It's perfect. Yeah. And I don't believe that you can grow without community of some kind. Like I
Agree.
really feel like, yeah, I have to develop that idea a little, but I noticed the impact it had on me to go to that, and the
Mm.
feedback we get from our community about the experience of being in community. It's just it takes learning 10 times higher, you know. The
Mm.
the whole experience becomes 10 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we leave, I know we're at time, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm curious, do you have a favorite coaching question that you like to ask?
Well, that's really great. I would probably say what I'm working towards right now is facilitating client growth. I think that's like my next
Mhm.
part of my own coaching, and that I'm trying to bring into end of care plans, even with my patients, or end of conversations when I'm supporting my clinicians. And so, my favorite coaching question right now is, tell me what you've learned about yourself
Mm.
this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So that has been probably one of my favorites to date, because then I get to, I think, wrap in everything of part of the evoking awareness. the new way of being and what they're taking forward with them. Yeah. And I don't know, I until actually doing this course too, didn't sit in a lot of reflection.
Mm.
And so I feel like it leaves people with, they have this initial question, but I think it sticks with them longer than after the conversation leaves them. It's like, what actually did I learn about myself from that? So yeah, that's been my favorite one to date.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's a good one. It helps, even when you think you know what they're going to say. I love being surprised
Yep,
by
me too.
what people reflect on after a coaching session. So yeah,
Yep.
it's a really good one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gina. I
Yeah.
really appreciate this. And is there, we're going to put in the show notes where people can reach you, but do you want to just share again your company name and maybe a website if you have?
Yeah, we are restorative sports therapy in Foothills, Alberta. Our website is www.restorativesportstherapy. We're on Instagram at restorative sports therapy. Other than that, I don't really hang out on
Yeah.
any other social media. Everyone's saying you should get into LinkedIn and all that, but um that those are the two main socials and where people will find us. But yeah,
Well, it sounds like your business is growing word of mouth. It's local, right?
yeah,
It's on site.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
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 Well, that's
We're
great.
not national yet, but I don't know if that'll ever
Yet.
happen.
I love the yet.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
a big yet fan.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world for building the success that you would love to realize for yourself. And this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Thanks for your time and for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.